on the Hip Hop Scholar podcast, we sit with an artist whose path is not just a journey, it's a testimony. A life carved from discipline, sharpened by experience, and elevated by purpose. A man who has walked through transformation after transformation, wearing many titles, mastering many roles, and carrying each of them with honor. This is Khalid Salaam, a creator, thinker, soldier, poet, strategist, and a storyteller whose art functions as both a mirror and a message. Now, before the beats, before the bars, and before the stage lights and studio sessions, he first answered another calling: service, military service, the kind that demands resilience, clarity, sacrifice, and an unshakable sense of duty. And right here on this platform, we take a moment to say, Khalid Salaam, we thank you for your service. We honor that commitment, and we acknowledge the weight of what it means to serve, return, rebuild, and still choose to give more of yourself to the world. But here's the beauty as well. He didn't stop there. He took that same discipline and turned it inward. He pursued higher education, earned an MBA, and stepped into the world of strategy, leadership, and intellectual rigor, showing that brilliance is not one-dimensional, that a soldier can also be a scholar, that an artist can also be an analyst, that a mind trained for structure can still create art that breathes, moves, and liberates. And then came the music. Not music created for applause, but music created for an impact. Not songs that just built on ego, but songs that are built with intention. Verses that don't chase trends, but that chase the truth. With the pseudonym Suitcoat Jones, he curates the language, interprets life, and builds architecture and soundscapes layered with spoken word, hip-hop, reflection, memory, and experience. He is an artist who reminds us that hip-hop is literature, that spoken word is philosophy, and that storytelling is survival. His work is the fusion of heart and intellect, what he calls the art of intelligence. And that phrase alone captures the essence of what he brings to the culture: a refusal to choose between artistic instinct and intellectual discipline, a craft that honors both the past and the possible, a voice shaped by service, sharpened by education, and stretched by creativity. On this platform, the Hip Hop Scholar podcast, we celebrate artists who move the culture forward with depth, with purpose, and with legacy. And Khalid Salaam stands exactly at that intersection, where wisdom meets rhythm, where discipline meets expression, and where lived experience becomes lyrical philosophy. So today, we welcome a man with layers, not just the artist, but the thinker, not just a veteran, but a visionary, and not just a performer, but a builder of meaning. We're talking about craft, purpose, and evolution, the kind that comes from rewriting your own narrative. Ladies and gentlemen, scholars and storytellers, hip-hop lovers and truth seekers, we welcome Khalid Salaam.
Thank you. That was beautiful. I was wondering that prior to this that individuals send in their own bios because it always sounds so amazing, and so you didn't disappoint this time either. So thank you.
Oh, you are very welcome again. Thank you for your service, for everything that you have given to the country, and also what you're giving to the culture as well. I appreciate the appreciation, but conducting that research on each artist and making certain that I can ask these specific questions, targeted questions, to really study. I am a scholar of study when it comes to hip hop, so I want to learn from you in addition to giving you your flowers. So again, sir, thank you for your service.
Thank you, and thank you for having me. Yeah,
Absolutely. So since you are familiar with the podcast, my first question. Tell me, when did you fall in love with hip hop the very first time?
I look at it as a relationship. For when you first get butterflies or something. So as soon as you discover hip hop, you're not necessarily, for me, it wasn't just love at first sight. It was just more, I like you, you know. So I can go back to that point when I have my stepdad's brother, my uncle Stan. He used to be playing these records in his room, but no one was ever allowed in his room. But he had these great speakers, so I used to sit outside his door. So one day he was just playing the breaks, Curtis Blow, and it just caught my attention, and I was just like, "What is that?" And I didn't know what it was. It was just like, okay, that's different from Earth, Wind, and Fire and Ohio players. It was just different.
Mhm.
And so then, of course, you start hearing more and more of hip hop, and then Fat Boys, Houdini came along, and I'm reciting their rhymes, some of which I still know, without even hearing it for many years. But and I would just start writing. But as it progressed, as I went to college first, and then went to the military second. Spent a year in college and then went into the military. You don't have much with you when you go. And so, the first tape that I bought as a GI was People's Instinctive Travels, Tribe Called Quest. And, you know, it was just different from anything that I had just really been listening to from Big Daddy Kane, from Rakim. It was just, LL was my guy at the time. Like, I still think LL is the GOAT, but Q-Tip just offered something different. It was very abstract, and it spoke to me in a different way. So my writing changed from that point, and I think that was the pinnacle point of me just, man, I love this, because as I start, because I was already the MC, from high school, beating on the lunch tables, everybody, having these ciphers. But it was just something fun to do for the time. You never really took it seriously. I never aspired to like be. I never thought I would be on TV or have a record deal or anything like that. So it was just that point when I heard People's Instinctive Travels. It spoke to me, and then everything started coming from Death Certificate to Brand Nubian, their first album. So all of these things, I was already a big Gangstar fan, but then not too long after that, Daily Operation drops and Pete Rock and CL Smooth, and so it's like all of this just molded me into, who I became at this moment. So that was my moment. People's Instinctive Travels.
Indeed. Shout out to A Tribe Called Quest and all of those
Yeah.
icons that you shared. When you said Curtis Blow, I distinctly remember these are the breaks. And,
Right.
that
Right.
part, like you said, that music, it's not even in front of you. It may have been years
Mm-hmm.
since you've heard it, but it's right there.
Mm-hmm.
That is
Yeah.
part of your
Yeah.
core memory that is unshakable.
Mm-hmm.
And every single one of those artists, from Kool Moe D, LL Cool J, a lot of them still
Mm-hmm.
in the game, being able to transition from hip hop to so
Mm-hmm.
much more. But
Mm-hmm.
seeing them from the very start, especially A Tribe Called Quest, where when they began, in Brand Nubian, I remember my
Mm-hmm.
brother buying the vinyl for that Brand Nubian. The song was I forget the particular
All for one.
song, huh?
All for one. One for all.
Uh I forget
That
I
was their
forget
first single.
something. But it wasn't that one. It was like it was something that was always playing, but those are part of my memories. If I sit long
Mm-hmm.
enough, I can definitely remember. I can spit the whole song and all those different things. We can go tit for tat. If we go from LL to all the different things and all those layers, especially
Mm-hmm.
with that old school hip hop, like
Mm-hmm.
that very inaugural musical bravado, because you go from Kumo D, he got on the lokes and the leather coat
Mm-hmm.
and all those different things, and then you have the contrast with Q-Tip, and they are very New York, very East Coast, very represent where they're from. Boulevard of Linden, right? That's where they're from.
Mm-hmm.
And it just
Right.
gave so many different layers of it. So, like you said, like in a relationship, when you first got into it, it was like, wait a minute, you're being introduced, kind of courting a
Mm-hmm.
bit,
Mm-hmm.
and never thought
Right.
that you would be married to it this long, right? How long have you been
Mm-hmm.
in hip hop as an artist and even just as a listener altogether?
Probably where I took artistry seriously and I felt like something could become of it, probably around 92. That's when I first started doing shows. I was actually in the military at the time, and so when I got to Fort Hood in Texas, in Killeen, one of my comrades in the military, we both discovered that each other could rap by listening to a Chi Ali instrumental. The that first single he had, girl, what is it? You know which one I'm talking about
The
with
girls, they love
Girls
me.
Look So Good. Yeah,
Yeah,
that one. So
girls
we were
look
listening to
so
the
good, but their
instrumental,
minds are not ready.
right? And I
Yeah.
think the Beat Nuts produced it, so it was like we just listened to that. So we start, and we actually were friends with cool with High Five back then. Like so it just random. We met a girl, and one Roderick was her cousin, so they would come over to the house. So they were there when we were freestyling over this tape, this instrumental, and then I was like, man, he kind of nice, you know. And then so we start writing and doing shows from that point on, and you know, moving around that local hip hop scene. So it was from '92, I'd say from '92 to now. Before then, it was just for fun. You know,
Mhm.
that's when I kind of felt like I had a purpose in the game.
Oh
You
man,
know,
the '90s. I mean, the '90s such an iconic time frame, and then to
it
say you
is
were performing around that time, like I mean, best of
paid too.
times. Say that again.
It was paid too. Like it wasn't just like we started getting paid to perform early. It was like, hey, we need somebody to do this, and it was like, so I was like, man, I'm a professional already. Opening up for various different acts. I know we opened up for OutKast on their first tour. Um, Grave Diggers. Who else? Craig Mack. De La Soul. All of it. Everybody who came through that area, we primarily opened up for them, and so it was a great experience. So I
Oh
think
man,
I was kind of
incredible.
spoiled.
Man, of
Yeah.
course. I mean, that's incredible to be on tour and
hmm
to open up for these acts and to just live in. Like I have on this Yo MTV Rap shirt, and you are the MTV Raps. Like you are a part of that culture, and to live
Yeah.
that. And so again, being able to explain this to this newer generation, where these are real rappers on real sound giving like spit
hmm
in the microphone seriously, and it's every single word being said, not just auto tunes or repeating everything.
Right.
This was a whole different facet of style. So it's definitely an honor to have you here to unpack that with you and really go down memory lane a bit, right? um
Yeah. Yeah. It's very nostalgic. Yeah.
even almost like a time machine. I had a artist before, Delano Mitchell. He and I went to college together, and he said that hip hop is like one of those genres. Not many other genres can, but it's a time capsule. Like as soon as you listen to a
It
song, or
is.
as soon as, like you said, Curtis Blow, the breaks, like it's like, wait a minute, like your mind just kind of shoots into where you were,
Right.
what you were doing in
Yep.
that moment. And that is the beautiful structure of what hip hop does and what it is still to this day. Like I know you still remember performing on the '90s a bit too, don't you?
I do. I mean, I actually can. You're absolutely right as it being a time capsule. Like, people can argue you up and down when this happened. I was like, nah, because such and such was out at this time, so I know exactly where I was and what year it was, and I can pinpoint everything through hip hop. I really can. So, it's definitely a time capsule, nostalgic, and it lets you gauge moments. So, yeah.
That's a amazing way to say it. Gauge moments like a timeline. Like if I want to remember
hmm
what happened in the '90s, I just have to remember what
hmm
song I was listening to. Like for me, Chief
Right.
Rocker by Lords of the
hmm
Underground was playing. Oh yeah, so this is what was happening in the world because this song was
hmm
playing here, right?
Right, right, right.
And so in that too, having that experience and that knowledge base and wisdom that you have, I have some questions that I do want to ask and still have this
hmm
conversation. So your journey, this amazing prolific journey, spans military service, higher education, and the arts.
Hmm.
So, how did each of those chapters, as a soldier, scholar, and a storyteller, how did that shape the voice you bring to your music today?
Um, it shaped it considerably. Um, I have a certain format to where I write, and I've always, even before, with hip hop, I was a writer, and I would get chastised in school by teachers because they were like, "This is not creative writing." And I was like, well, I don't know any other way to write. In the way, you tell me to write how I speak, and when I do that, you criticize it. And so, not until I got into college where my writing was appreciated, they would always mark points off just because of the way I would phrase sentences. And my grandmother always said, "Boy, you march to the beat of your own drum." I didn't care what they. I was like, "Well, this is how I write, and I'm going to continue to write this way." So I'll just take the loss. If you want to take points off, then okay. And that's just how I was. And so with that, with me carrying that attitude, and then growing up the way I did, I was raised primarily by my grandparents. My grandmother was very hardcore, so going into the military, I was already disciplined. And so none of that extra stuff that they would do in basic training, it didn't phase me. So, and so because I already had that discipline set in me, and so just moving from there, it just um, allowed me to connect with different people, even older people who would, man, you have an old soul. I grew up in church, so that's, even as a producer outside of being an MC, I've been a musician since I was 4 years old. So that shapes my sound. And so when we go back to Tribe Called Quest, um, being gospel and my style of playing is more jazzy. For church settings, it was a little bit jazzy because I would listen to jazz to learn how to play because I'm self-taught. And so when I heard Tribe Called Quest, the music that they were doing was right up my alley. Things I would actually recognize songs from samples that they would use, and so
Mhm.
but I can also play. I play keys, guitar, bass, and drums, and so the main four instruments that most bands use, and so but I sample too, and so all of these things shaped um, my sound because I always wanted my sound. We come from an era where not a lot of people sounded alike. Everybody had their own sound. You mentioned Lords of the Underground. There's nobody that sounded like them.
Mhm.
Nobody that, Foo Snickers. Maybe you can compare Foo Snickers and Das Effects a little bit. Sometimes everybody, some people had some similarities, but biting was the word that you didn't want to be, considered a biter.
Mhm.
Even
Mhm.
UTFO, they didn't sound like anybody. So as you have these various different nuances of individuality, whether you're a group or a solo artist. And so that's what I always took pride in. I still don't think anybody sounds like me to this day.
And you were rooted in that from the very beginning. So I want to bring
Hmm.
back to what you were saying about when you were writing in school, because I'm an English
Hmm.
professor, and what I
Hmm.
have to make certain with my students is that I need you to unlearn everything that your teachers ever told you, because the trauma
Hmm.
of trying to write and to give that content, that always happens where someone's looking at it subjectively and not objectively, and it
Hmm.
holds you back. Like, now you're scared to write. Now you're wanting to make
Hmm.
certain, is this correct, is this correct, is this correct. And so shout out to your grandmother for making certain that you had the discipline instilled
Hmm.
in you, where you had an intrinsic motivation, like, take your points off, take your little points off. No,
Hmm.
this isn't creative
Hmm.
writing, this is my voice in my
Hmm.
writing. And so that
Yeah.
is such statementship about how that coalesced into your music as well. Like you said, the word biting. Like, that was a word back then where if you were trying to be like someone else, oh man, that's a negative. You're
Hmm.
not trying to be like someone else.
Hmm.
Bringing up food schnickens and with I am a true food schnick, and them having
Right.
those ballads of
Hmm.
authenticity, right? And I think that that
Hmm.
is something that this newer generation could absolutely listen to. Some of the artists that I
Hmm.
have interviewed in the podcast, I still am in touch with them. And so I give them that homework, like listen to OutKast, listen to some old, Silk the Shocker or some Nas or even some other music that you have never listened to, and do your research, figure that out, because, you have a similar sound to this, yet I want you to dig deeper and see that, OutKast has
Hmm.
been out for a very, very long time, and their style changed over
Yes,
the
they have.
decades. It changed.
Hmm.
And so, but still staying true to themselves. And so, with everything that you've shared with that about, going from your writing prowess to being a musician. So that music is in you, especially being able to play by ear and being self-taught. Like that is
Hmm.
something that cannot be taught, cannot be replicated. That is, and that you are who Dr. Dre think he is. Dr. Dre is a great
I
producer and
believe that.
everything. You know what I'm saying?
I believe that. I do. I think that I jump genres. Um, I don't usually, you know, brag or boast, but I feel like I jump genres better than anyone. I can jump to R&B and not miss a beat, and it doesn't sound anything like my hip hop. I can jump to jazz or I can jump to gospel, and without any fall off. And so I think that makes me one of the most unique producers that that's around. And so you're absolutely right in saying that. I
Yeah.
agree with it at least.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. That's exactly what I hear is that, being able to take the accompaniment, those musical notes, and do them internally and create something brand new into all those different genres. Shout out to Dr. Dre and what he's done for hip
Yeah,
hop as
yeah,
well, but not
definitely.
even at the level in which you've discussed it and have done that. Everybody has a different journey, right? Not taking anything
Hmm.
away, but with everything that you
Absolutely.
have embedded, instilled, and can create, that is profound and insightful at minimum, for real.
I think also in conjunction with that, I love digging through records and chopping samples. But a lot of sample choppers do not contribute back to the culture. So as when I do R&B, that is that is me giving back to the pool so somebody can sample me later on in life. When they go through these old records, when my R&B stuff becomes old and they chopping those samples, I've given back to the pool. Instead of just taking, and that's my perspective on you know the way I do it.
Amazing, amazing view of that, where wanting to give back as you take away, like that reciprocity of,
Hmm.
I give and take and give, again back into that relationship you said with hip hop from the
Hmm.
beginning,
Yeah,
where
yeah, yeah.
you're taking from
You.
it, but you got to give to it for
Hmm.
it to be a longevity of a relationship. There you go now.
Right. Right. Yeah, it's a definitely a relationship. Common said he used to love her,
Yeah,
and some people say he still love her. So I still love her. For good or the relationship is what, for better or for worse.
there you
So
go. Through sickness,
sometimes
through
you gotta
health.
live with some of the hard times. Of it. Nas once said hip hop was dead, and I felt where he was coming from, and a lot of people were offended. That was his perspective. Um, I thought it was on life support at one point. I didn't think that it was dead. I think that it's so many youth now that are gravitating towards our version of traditional hip hop a little bit. So I definitely, my son Wiz Kelly, he is a phenomenal producer as well as MC. But he grew up around it. It was in his house, in his home. He's always had a studio. But his mom listened to the Doobie Brothers, and so he has a very eclectic ear. And
Mm-hmm.
so some people say he sounds like me. He's vastly different from me, but the same, if that makes sense. So he can do the things that I can do, but it's like a new twist on it. And I was like, man, that's amazing. Even with the equipment that we use, it's the same equipment, but he can make it do things I didn't even know it did.
Mm-hmm.
if
Mm-hmm.
and so I was like, man, how you do that? He was like, yeah, with the machine. I was like, it does that. I didn't know it did certain things. I just do my beats and going about my business. But he figures out, little twists and turns, and then so I think, a lot of the youth that's coming along now, especially him and his peers, they are, man, they're pretty phenomenal. And they like what I do, which is, typically the young kids, you sound old and dated, but they don't think so. Not if they're asking me for features. So I was like, man, I'm honored to be respected in that space as well. So
Absolutely. For sure. It when you
mhm,
spoke on that, it sounded just like Stephon Curry and his father. His father played in the
hmm
NBA, but Stephon Curry is, an NBA legend as well. He made the game his
right,
own. So that's you and your son in hip hop, where he is the Stephon Curry, and you support that 1,000,000%.
hmm
Because that's what we want
yeah,
for our children. We want for our children to be better than we were. We support them through a strong
hmm
foundation. And so shout out to your son and his crew when it comes to their growth, especially being
hmm
raised in that essence of what it really was and what it is to what it could be, that possibility
yeah,
of the impossible happening. That's an amazing trope to define. And then also, I saw this young lady on social media to add to what you were saying about hip hop, when hip hop was and even sometimes is felt to not be alive. She made this comment
hmm
about how there's no rap music in the top 40, in the Billboard top 40 now. Like, this is the
hmm
first time ever where it's not been there since Kendrick Lamar songs have
hmm
now taken off. But she said that's going back to the roots of hip hop, where hip hop was
I agree.
designed to, to preach, almost to uplift the
hmm
community. It wasn't there necessarily for entertainment. I was raised in
Right.
a generation with self destruction.
And
I'm
Public Enemy, yeah,
that it wasn't top 40. It wasn't there for entertainment. It was for upliftment,
right.
for you to be able to see yourself and to love knowledge of self, love self. So when she
hmm
made that comment, and I'm gonna tag her when I find that again because I know I saved it. I
hmm
think it was a very
hmm
insightful statement that she made, where we don't need to be in a top 40 into this
Right.
entertainment piece. What we need is to get
hmm
back to our roots and to build better that community spirit of hip hop, that knowledge of self of hip hop, that creative, channeling different parts of your brain, like you and your son are doing now. And what you've done forever is
hmm
being able to use, like you say, the art of intelligence. I want you to talk about that. You describe your creative style as the art of intelligence. What does intelligence look like in hip hop to you? Let's start there with that, with your phrase, the art of intelligence.
Well, and actually, it's not my phrase, and I'm a part of that product. The Art of Intelligence started with Tommy Bottoms of Def Poetry Jam. So Tommy Bottoms, and we just fell short of a Grammy nomination too with that project, but that was his project, that was his baby. He had searched far and wide for trying to get that project off the ground. He had went through a few producers, and we have a mutual friend and another Def Poetry Jam alumni in Abyss Graham. And so Abyss Graham asked, told him to consider me. And so once we start talking and working on the project, because and his concept was that AI is kind of taking over, but don't lose the thought about the art of human intelligence. Like it can't function without us. And so that was really his baby. I just provided a soundscape for his words in that particular project, which I think his spoken word is phenomenal, and I was just honored to be able to hear a soundscape to put behind his amazing words. And so the art of intelligence, as he describes it, is just that we can't lose sight of who we are and our own human intelligence as it compares to AI. And I thought it was very profound because I agree with him wholeheartedly. Like I'm I have this love hate relationship with um, AI. Like it can be useful, but it can't replace art because it has no feeling. Like we put so much of ourselves into the music and the arts, and it's emotional.
Right.
Artificial intelligence can't be emotional. It doesn't have feelings. It doesn't have a soul. It can't cry. So it can't make a song about your brother who was taken away from us prematurely. It can't do that. And that's what we as human needs we need when it comes to art, be it music, painting. We need a human connection from that standpoint, because some songs just you listen to some songs, it just gives you chills. You can listen to a song like Dear Mama, and who's ever going through that struggle, you're gonna feel that. Or the Brenda has a baby, or Ghostface, um, with All That I Got Is You. Songs
Mhm.
like that.
Mhm.
If you grew up in those environments, and it don't have to necessarily be a sad environment, it could be summertime. Will Smith,
Yep.
like it always touches home every summer. So he got a hit every summer, regardless of how long ago that song was. And so I just don't think AI can pull it off. It can make they probably create a little club bopper, but we're not always in the most of us are not in the club. That's a young person sport. I didn't even like the club when I was young. I'd go because I'm hanging out, but I've never been a club person. I just went because that's where the girls were.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
so, and you just go where they are. But it wasn't my scene where you have to talk loud, trying to talk, because the music playing so loud. So it just, you know, once they created cigar bars and cafes, that was more more or less my bag right there down the road. And so. But yeah, Art of Intelligence, man, it was just a phenomenal thought, um, in the essence of Tommy Bottoms. So I was just grateful to be a part of such, a phenomenal experience with him. Like, and these are areas where friendships are built too. We're about to start working on something for next year soon. So I'm excited about that. So once he comes up with his concept, then I'll come with some sounds. So
Oh, fantastic! Shout out to Tommy Bottoms with that piece
yeah,
and with
yeah.
that whole spectrum of, that thought process. Because yes, we are in an age of AI, and as an English professor, trust I understand
Hmm.
this battle of wanting to use it, but then you also have to use your own intelligence. I tell students many times, you are
Hmm.
enough. Your voice is enough. You don't have to rely on trying to use AI. And then looking at it from the hip hop perspective, this rise of the AI rapper. So Timbaland, he's curating different music from different artists to create this machine essentially to be a rapper, and it's so inauthentic. And also with it, as you shared, and as nearly every single person that I've interviewed, creating music is therapy. It is a therapeutic way to express and to really just get outside of the world and be able to center yourself. So to take that away and to allow some type of bot to create this falsehood of words for you, it takes away so much. And I don't think that this newer generation understands that it's good for some things, and I mean some things in particular. However, it could never replace what you have to say. You are sufficient enough. So, what do you think about this rise of AI and hip hop, and then this whole, especially Timbaland trying to create this whole artist around it?
This is where I become the grumpy old man, because I'm totally against that. I think that um, when you're an artist, your whole goal is to master the craft and tell your story. What story does the AI have? Now you can tell some fictional stories, but it takes away um, a process. Like I mentioned before, the emotion is not going to be there. Um, and so what I find also that they're doing, you're really trying to, you already don't pay artists, but you're really trying to go out of your way now to discard finances. Artists, they started with streaming, that took out,
Mm-hmm.
album and single sales to
Mm-hmm.
so, where you're getting less than a penny for a stream. And, no one really knows how to thwart that because streaming also puts you in front of people that you've never would have been in front of
True.
as well. So you have that aspect of it. And until we figure out a way to bypass that, we can go to Bandcamp and sell it, but how many people just go to Bandcamp? Just being honest, unless you already have a thriving fan base, it really doesn't benefit you. You might make a few $100s here or there, just from my experience. But if your fan base is truly thriving, and AI, you have a high profile person like this, it allows someone, and I'll speak about gifts. So it allows the ungifted to try to walk in your purpose. Like I know that I was a gifted artist because I play 8 instruments. I've never had a formal lesson. So the only way that can come from is above. And so when you see someone who's untalented and they may look at a person like me, oh, I want to do that, instead of finding out what their true gift is, they want to do what I do. And so when you bring AI into the picture, then you have this person. Now they think they're on your level because I just created this with AI, and you're not,
Right.
But if it pops off because of AI, now this person is getting the awards. This person is getting revenue from something that they don't even supposed to be doing. You're not supposed to be doing this because if you were, then you probably wouldn't use AI. And he's not one of my favorite producers anyway, so I'm not surprised. Just listening to, and I don't want to talk bad about him. I just hear him on interviews, and his perspectives on music and my perspectives on music differ
Mm-hmm.
greatly. Even the way, the style, you know. And so I'm not surprised, and he's not the only one. I think Eric Sermon is getting into it as well. And so for me, it was a little disappointing, just to see somebody who I thought is super dope. Not saying he's not super dope, but just they're actually, and I don't think the AI is legitimate either because they're putting music into the AI, and the AI is basically not innovating the music; it's creating the same exact music that you put in. So I don't understand the benefit of that. Like maybe if you put in like a couple sounds and then it created this large big composition, then maybe, but it's not even doing that. It's just copying what you put in there. And so I don't see the benefit of that at all, and then you're putting the beats of other up and coming producers in it. That's why I never submit to these contests because then they take your music, put it in AI, and then it might change it up a little bit, and now you'll be looking at my beat like I'm the copycat. You know what I mean? And I
Mm-hmm.
don't, I'm not a copycat at all, and no one that I associate with is. Everybody has their own niche, and so I'm not a big fan of it at all. I'm not a fan of it at all, and so and I don't want to seem like an old fogey, but in this aspect, I will gladly wear that badge as an old fogey, like, cause I don't like it. Create. You got to create. This is called a creative space, not a instant space. It's creative, and
Mm-hmm.
so that's just my view on it.
And I appreciate that view because I was going to step in and give the old woman view of it because when I was in high school, I used to work at the disc jockey in the mall where we sold the cassette
Hmm.
tapes and the CDs and the vinyl. Like that was my job for many, many years. And so going
Hmm.
from people coming in to be like, where's the new Cash Money CD to now being able to purchase it through streaming services, it's like it's
Yeah.
not the same. From holding the disc, seeing that cover, even having the covers on your
Right.
bedroom wall, collection and such of that, taking that piece away, I distinctly remember and would love for that to come back, where you have that collection and you're able to actually touch and have
Hmm.
something that's tangible as opposed to clicking.
Right.
One of the artists that I spoke with, Lyrical, he was saying how, it's very different where if you wanted to hear a song, especially like on MTV Raps or on the Rap City or anything, you had to actually be there at that time and sit there and wait for it to play. It wasn't, oh, I'll just catch it on YouTube and play it anywhere at any time.
Right.
No, it was you had
Right.
to make the
Right.
time management, which a lot of, young people don't have. We had time management to make that time and to be on time
Hmm.
to watch that. And then if you were going to record, I remember too, like on the radio, if I couldn't buy the cassette tape, you had to time it just right. And that innovation of putting that little piece of paper, if you didn't have that tab on the cassette,
Hmm.
and as soon as that
Right.
song came on, pressing them two buttons at the same time, so
Right.
you did not have the commercial. Like,
Now that's nostalgic for certain. Yeah.
like, and that is an experience, and that investment in wanting to really truly, not just be entertained, but to be immersed in the music, finding ways to
Hmm.
capture the music, the ciphers, going into having those freestyle moments in on the bus, in the cafeteria, in different places. That is something
Hmm.
that I would love for young people to have. But again, you can go on YouTube. You can have your Beats audio speaker going and play any
Hmm.
music at any time instead of creating your own. And so now we're going into this digital age where now it's not
Hmm.
only being able to play music, you can now create music, and it's that inauthentic type where, Dr. Jose Vincent, he was my very first interview. He made the statement to
Okay.
say that ChatGPT will never make anything innovative. It's just like you said, it's just a copycat of doing the same thing over and
Hmm.
over and over. So this reliance,
Hmm.
this over reliance on AI, it doesn't bring intelligence. It just brings a basic nature to whatever it is you're creating. And people have to understand that, where it's just the basic of whatever you're trying to create. So, the only reason why this algorithm, oh, so you use AI, so then the algorithm then allows it to, to penetrate into different areas that, you may not have been ever heard of, or and so on. And it has those things, but then, it's just a balance of things to consider. But again, as the old fogey, I'll wear that hat. I feel like we should do
Yeah, me
some.
too.
There should be some type of old school type of appreciation, and a communal
Hmm.
spirit when it comes to wanting to bring that back, because that would truly, because even when I had these young artists to listen to artists, even my son, I have a son who's in college, have him listen to
Hmm.
some old school OutKast, like not new school. No, I want you to go back to Southern playalistic Cadillac funky music.
Southern Playalistics.
I want
That's
you
my
to,
time.
you know what I'm
Hmm.
saying? I want you to listen to that piece, right? And then think about when, I was in Atlanta around that time when that music came out. So, think about that part. And this is not something that was YouTube. There was no any of that. This is, it wasn't even Napster or LimeWire then. This is you
None of
having
that.
to experience it and
Hmm.
capture it and be a part of the culture. That is like a whole other type of experience. So I'm right there with you, right there with you.
Yeah. Yeah. That was a wonderful time to be alive.
It was.
We didn't have cell phones. I did for a short period of time. I had a big one for about 4 or 5 months, and that bill was so high from Bell South. I was like, yeah, I don't need this, and I ain't had nobody to talk to. Only my other homeboy, and we ain't gonna be on the phone with each other. So it was like, yeah. So it's a different time. No, you didn't. We wasn't pulling out our phone to take pictures. Who I ended up marrying, my kid's mother. She used to always have a little camera though, but so she was big on taking pictures back then. That's the only because I wasn't thinking about it. I was in the moment, but she would just take them pictures, go get them developed all the time. So she has a lot of the pictures that were taken back then, and so but we lived in those moments. We didn't necessarily it wasn't all documented. I guess the Freaknik stuff was documented by somebody,
Right.
but not, a lot of stuff wasn't documented. You just have to go off your noggin, and tell. I have a lot of amazing stories that I tell my son. He knows some of them by heart now. I know that story. Oh yeah, okay. I told it to you already, but
Hmm.
you know, um, yeah, I love having great memories to be able to recall,
And then
from
even
those times.
capturing it with those, disposable cameras, right? You may have had a Polaroid, but even
Hmm.
having a disposable camera, I mean,
Hmm.
the faith you had to hopefully capture that picture, right? But and still live in the moment. Like you're
Hmm.
going to capture it and move on. There's no looking at it to be like, oh, let's redo
Hmm.
it. It's, hopefully
Yeah,
it comes
right,
out. Yeah.
right,
I mean,
right.
that there is again a lost art. We're dinosaurs when it comes to it, but again, that's
Hmm.
where hip hop started. It became a voice for the voiceless. It gave attention not to attention seekers, but to messages that needed to be heard and felt. That's the essence of what hip hop truly is, and music as well, gospel music. Many artists that I interview, that was their very first introduction to music is gospel. And what is gospel music? Nothing more than the word of God, being
Hmm.
sung and felt and expressed in so many different facets. Where you have the musicians, you got the old 100s, the kind of church I was going to growing up. My daddy was a deacon, and they would sing the old 100s, and he had a very, very deep bass voice that he would use because that was what
Hmm.
would bring the spirit, the Holy Spirit, into the place. Like music was used to really,
Hmm.
shift moods and spirits and such. And so that's what many
Right.
artists have said is what they're trying to attempt, whether intentionally or unintentionally, with their music, is to bring in this Holy
Hmm.
Spirit within themselves and to share that with others. Like you were saying, like you're taking from that, but also giving that back. And that speaks volumes about your authenticity and truly in that aspect of what you bring to as a musician to the music, to the beauty of all different genres of music.
You mentioned your father was a deacon. My grandfather was the pastor. So I lived in the house with the pastor and the first lady, and it was Kojic, so it was Church of God
Yeah,
in
yeah.
Christ, and so it was holiness. But I remember I was in high school when Tony came out, and the earliest song that I remember from them was Hey Lil Walter, and I was like, that's Wade in the Water. Wade in the water. Wade in the water. It was just they just did their version of it. And so that sparked something in me too, because, you know, um, a lot of church songs, were flipped into secular songs. A lot of secular songs flipped into church songs.
Hmm.
So it's, a give and pull because it was all spiritual, just like you mentioned, So
Yeah.
I always try to keep soul incorporated into, you know, my music creations. I think I heard Jermaine Dupri mention it, or maybe Brian Michael Cox. They were talking about R&B, and it was like, someone asked why it wasn't R&B like it used to be, and because he was like, because most these newer kids don't grow up in church. Like whether you wanted to go to church or not, you had to go to church.
Right.
And so even my aunt that lived in the project, she wouldn't go because she was churched out from her own childhood, but she was sending my cousins on the bus to church. So
Hmm.
everybody grew up in church in some form of fashion, whether it's Baptist or Pentecostal, and so once you got on your own, if you decided to be an artist, and in the secular world, you still had an amount of soul in you. Like I knew Fantasia was from the church from the first time I heard her sing.
Oh yeah.
Or that, I could tell. I knew. I was like, oh, she grew up in church, and you don't hear that a lot, in the modern day artists. They don't have that passion for singing. It's just something to, rapping as well. It's just they don't. A lot of people don't have a passion for it. It looks like I can get rich off doing it, and that's the difference. Like whether I ever made a penny off music or not, I will be a musician. And so that's the difference. Some people, well, I ain't doing nothing with it, and then you see them, if it doesn't pop off for them, they doing something else. They're not an artist anymore. What you run into them, hey man, what you doing? Oh man, I'm doing fashion designing now. I was like, man, you still do music? Like, nah. And so, you know, that's the disappointing part. When you have people trying to jump in like it's double dutch. Everybody rocking back and forth trying to get in between those two ropes. And so that's how I envision it. Like currently, just not enough soul in anything, and not saying there is none. It's just not enough. And so going back to the top 40 thing, um, that is absolute facts in what she was saying. You think about, and a lot of our music, it isn't made for that because we're speaking to our people. I'm not speaking to nobody. I only now if somebody else listen to it and they can take something from it, I only speak to black people. Now I'm sorry if that offends someone, but that's what I know. I know us, and that's who I speak to.
Mm-hmm.
And so, if anybody else gets something from it, great. But if you don't, then it wasn't meant for you anyway. This black folks business for me. You
Right.
know, um,
Unapologetically.
so
Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely.
I can't apologize for what I do what I know. And I work in corporate America, and so you know, you half the things if you even heard my music, you wouldn't understand what I was talking about. It would be very abstract to you. You wouldn't understand. You wouldn't understand the acronyms. You wouldn't understand, anything I'm using as an analogy, and in my songs and verses. And so, like, and our slang changes daily.
Right.
You know, it changes daily. So it's like uh, a moving target. So anytime, certain things mean certain, like even words that we used to use, the kids these days, they take those same words and it means something totally different. I remember when down low just meant you were just doing something in secret.
Right.
Now it means something totally different from the 90s.
Mm-hmm.
So, so just from coming from that perspective, I always say, man, I will just create until I can't create no more, physically or mentally. So it's my duty. I don't know if anyone else feels that way, but I feel like when God gives you certain gifts, you use them or you lose them.
That's
And
right.
so, I'm scared to stop because then I won't be, I don't, I might not be dope no more if I try to kick. Like I was a prolific hooper, but I don't get to hoop that much no more. So every time I go, I get sorrier and sorrier. You know, get sorrier and sorrier.
Well, it's a young man's game now. Our bodies are a lot different than
Yeah,
back in the 90s. Doing that jump shot
right.
then doesn't need ice and
Yeah, well, that
and
don't go nowhere.
yeah.
My
uh,
jump shot though, I still got that. I just that moving around. I ain't chasing nobody.
right.
You know, um,
Defense hands up and
my
everything, staying on them.
yeah, my body don't it just don't move fast enough for my brain. My brain hasn't forgot anything,
Yeah.
but my body don't cooperate. So but the jump shot don't ever go nowhere. I can walk on the court right now and it's butter.
There you
So
go. Nothing wrong with that.
yeah,
So
yeah.
I wanted to, when you were talking about the soul of the church in music, it reminded me of that movie Sinners, where the guitarist, his father being the preacher, and it was like,
Mhm,
you don't need to go play that music, the devil right up on you. And sure enough,
mhm,
his playing of that guitar stirred souls, right? Stirred it so
mhm,
much even, and him, having that for many years, but yet the movie itself having the content of hip hop, like it showcased all those different layers of our music and how our music spoke to us during different decades, how it influenced us
mhm,
over time, through time, and how truly, hip hop, and I've said this to a few artists as well, for me, I'm there with you. When I was in undergrad, and I distinctly remember I used to write the Hip Hop Scholar. as my signature. I put my name, Melanie, my last name, and the hip hop scholar on pen and paper for no reason at all. I was just such a hip hop head and listening to music and having to listen to music to help me go through the day to save my life. Even is that I need to be able to listen to this song, like Running by the Far Side. Like I distinctly remember, just listening to that and just, being pulled into such up on my by my bootstraps, as they say. Much like how gospel music does as well. Like it just does that to you, and it's something that you just can't take away from somebody. Like I don't make a dime. I never charge anybody for this podcast because again, this is part of my research, but this is also part of my giving back to hip hop, so that this is curated. This is an archive. So posthumously, when I'm never seen again, and have ascended to the heavens, this is there for all to remember and to capture and to cite in academia, but also for my children, my great grandchildren, to remember what it was and why it was, and to get back into that. I distinctly remember the young man, the artist Devin 22, and I sent to him the Busy Bee Starsky and Kool Moe Dee 1981, that battle rap. I sent that to him, and I said, I need you to listen to this. I need you to hear how it began, when it wasn't just Kendrick Lamar and Drake having beef with each other. I need you to hear what a rap beef really sounded like from the very start and very beginning. And I'm working on a paper for publication as well, because again, it cannot be lost. We can't lose that history, just like we can't lose how to plant seeds and grow our own food. We have to be able to, learn scripture, remember scripture as we go through life and all. But I mean, all those points, you really made me think about and remember where I started from, and what's important with that, and the why of it. So that is, I appreciate that, Khalid, to, be able to talk that with you. I still do have some questions, and I know we're going to run out of time, but you're going to have to come back. That you will.
Hey, I'd love to, but
Yes.
yeah, I thank you. I appreciate you having me. Whatever questions you have, yeah, I'll be ready.
Oh yeah. Well, I still got a few. I got a few more minutes.
Okay, yeah.
Let's see. Let's ask this one. Okay. And you have performed. So, but if you could perform a spoken word or a hip hop fusion piece on any stage in the world, whether again or for the first time, where would you choose and why?
Hmm, that's a great question. You asked that question before? 'Cause I
To a
missed that
few.
on.
To a few people,
So
yes. Just to a
that's a
few
great
people.
question. Um, for me, you know, it's about legacy. So I wouldn't mind going back home. I'm from Decatur, Illinois. So I'm from the same place Abraham Lincoln is from. So and actually the original home of the Chicago Bears. So but I wouldn't mind doing something at home. And it being received very well. I create because of legacy now. We you brought up basketball, so I feel like I'm just playing pickup ball. I'm not no longer in the league, and I let the young boys, they're in the league and they have the NBA contracts, and I'm at LA Fitness hooping. That's how I look at what I do now. And I just do what I want to. So it's legacy. So going back home for me would be monumental. And have, all my friends from high school, those who love me and maybe those who didn't like me. But, graduated a long time ago, so you shouldn't have any grievance with me because I never did nothing to nobody. So I think that would be my mom has never seen me perform. She's still living, so she's still fairly young, 71. So that would be something that I would like to do. Um, and it doesn't have to be be in front of a whole bunch of people with, you know, hopes of getting famous or, getting, because I'm not looking for no record deal or anything like that. Maybe if I was younger and still, you know, trying to um, become famous and rich off of this, then my answer may be different. But right now, at this stage, it would just be, and it could be intimate. I would like to be able to perform and do everything that I do, because that's what I try to do now. Like, so if I got to bring every instrument on stage and dib one dab on this, jump on this, rap, and then have all my friends that I grew up with, all musicians. We all grew up in church, so everybody can play. So I could have them play as well. We've never did anything outside of church or nothing like that together. So I think that would be dope.
That would be dope. Oh man, I had to be front row, and I hope that comes to fruition too. To go back home, Sankofa, as they say, and retrieve what you
Hmm.
once had, and to give back. That is a beautiful answer, Khalid. Beautiful answer when it comes to that. Today, and you haven't performed in front of your
Thank you.
mother. I've been an educator for 23 years, and I had the opportunity to teach my class in front of my mother one time because my mother had never
Mm.
seen I win all these different awards. I'm a pretty good educator, and I've won all these different awards. And then at one time, she was able to come sit in my classroom, and I was teaching my class.
Hmm.
This is a campus out here in Houston ISD, as a matter of fact, and I got District Teacher of the Year at that particular campus in Third
Wow.
Ward, and I was like, it was just a really nice experience to be able to do what I do as an educator in front of my mother, who knows that I do that and I do it well, but to actually
Hmm.
see me in my element, it was I was able to be myself, but then not be, because that professionalism
Hmm.
comes in, but also. That my mama right there, so I gotta make certain this is good, and y'all gonna have to
Hmm.
behave and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
But I sincerely hope and pray that does come to pass very soon for you and your friends, to really
Thank
just
you. Thank you.
do what you all do best, like you all used to do it, and just bring back that nostalgia and get back into
Hmm.
that mindset. That'll be amazing, especially when you all do so. Oh yeah,
Thank you. And I believe you are an excellent educator. Like I wouldn't doubt that for a second.
oh yeah.
I can tell by the way you curate here, like you're definitely a good educator. And they probably your students probably just cling on to every word because there are a lot of terrible educators out there, and so in order to be good, you have to um, keep the attention span of your students.
Yeah.
I've been an online professor, so I definitely understand teaching. So
Mm-hmm.
you know,
Keeping their attention, and then wanting them to be successful, because that is
hmm
my passion. I'm driven to ensure students success.
hmm
I'm listening, I'm reading
yeah,
everything, like I want to unpack this with you, and even for my sons, to make certain for them, like I understand, but they know everything, of course, right? They know everything. Doesn't matter if mom was a teacher
hmm
or a college professor or whatever. But with all that being said, I do want to ask you one more question, because we talked about this earlier.
okay.
Now you go by Khalid
hmm
Salaam, but you also have this name Suitcoat Jones that
hmm
you go by. So I would like for you to kind of explain to us
I
this
do.
Suitcoat Jones pseudonym that you have for yourself.
It is a pseudonym, but it is not my artist name. So when you look at um how Ghostface and Wu-Tang Clan had all these. Everybody had like multiple names, but you
Mm-hmm.
know them as Ghostface. So there's that. There is that part of it, but it was also, I did a project called '70s Baby. So two albums that I've done as a solo artist, '70s Baby and Bareham Fisherman. I wrote films to them, and so with '70s Baby, I was looking for um, a good name for my main character. It's a black exploitation film that I wrote. On that on and so yeah, Superfly. You have Priest, and then you have Goldie, um, as well. So those types of names. And so I knew a guy who, um, as a kid, he didn't have a winter coat. He was, all of us were poor, but he was like one of the poorest, and he would wear this suit coat to school. And so, um, people picking on him, they would call him Suitcoat Jones, just making fun of him. And so, he, and so from there, he doesn't even remember this because when I told him that I used that name, he's like, I don't remember nobody calling me that. So he must have blocked it out or something
Right,
because it was
right.
probably traumatic. And so, but that's where I got the idea for the name, but that became my character. And then when IG came along, you know, um, I just use that as my IG name. So when people see it, they think, oh, so if they have me featured on a song or something like that, and they don't check with me first for my IPI number or ask me, they just put Suitcoat Jones. So you may see some features out there, Suitcoat Jones, but my actual artist name is Khalid Salaam. But I'll take Suitcoat Jones. My son, he keeps, man, you should do something with it, and so I may just release a whole Suitcoat Jones project. Kind of like Mark Twain and Samuel
Mm-hmm.
Leghorn Clemens.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So how that dynamic works. He didn't use his main name when he was Mark Twain. So it's definitely a pseudonym, and it is catchy. You know, so some people, newer people call me Suit. Most folks just call me K. Because no one says whole names anymore, but like people who've been around maybe in the last 5 or 6 years call me Suitcoat Jones. So,
And that's, man, that's
but
such a
that's where it
beautiful
came
story.
from.
That's such a beautiful story because that's one of the prompts that I have. Like, matter of fact, part of my lesson plan this week is one of the prompts is, everybody talks about the greatest teacher that they ever had, but what about that great
Mhm.
student? And remembering the student not because they had the A in the class, but what was something memorable that
Mhm.
they have done. And so just one little, not even
Mhm.
little, but one moment in your childhood and giving that nod to this person who, like you say, they don't remember, and
Mhm.
all the trauma and such going through that, especially living in Decatur, Illinois. It's
Mhm.
it's freezing cold up there. Y'all get all four
Mhm.
seasons. So to think
Mhm.
he was wearing a
Oh
suit
yeah,
coat,
all four.
a suit coat in this
Boy,
cold
a
weather.
big sweater and a suit coat. Mhm.
See, and you never forgot that. And that is, again, that authenticity. That is something that AI could never do, is to use a memory and create a hero out
Mhm.
of somebody who may have felt that they were forgotten, which is why he forgot it.
Mhm.
But you always remembered that of him. And
Mhm.
he may not have said that to you. He may not have been able to even put those feelings together, but I know that meant everything to him. And your
Mhm.
continuance to use that also speaks volumes, again, of your giving back to where you came from. So I appreciate you telling us that story today of where Suitcoat Jones comes from.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Oh man,
Thank you.
this
Thank you.
uh,
Happy to tell it.
yeah, and man, that is. This has been such an amazing interview. I do have other questions, but not even what I have here, but just more questions here. So you will definitely, you're being voluntold that you'll have to come back on the podcast. Yes, yes, sir. You're being
Yes,
voluntold.
ma'am.
But this has been a.
Just let me know. Just let me know.
I will. I definitely will. I appreciate the time you've given to both myself as well as the Hip Hop Scholar family. With that being said, this is going to be the end of the Hip Hop Scholar podcast. We will see you on the next one. We out of here. Peace. All right.
Peace.